we have seen the making of the Constitution, the assembly that framed it, and its salient features. Today, we answer a question that surprises many newcomers. Where did all these ideas actually come from? Our founders did something both humble and brilliant. Instead of insisting on inventing everything from scratch, they studied the constitutions of the world, took the best tested ideas from each, and wove them together, adapting every borrowing to Indian as tiny as own conditions. The result is often called an Exarch 200, borrowed in 200 Constitution and 200. But that word undersells it. It is really a masterpiece of synthesis. Today, we will learn exactly what was drawn from where. The parliamentary system from Britain, fundamental rights and judicial review from America, directive principles from Ireland, a strong center from Canada, and much more, all resting on the foundation of the Government of India Act of 1935. And here is a practical price. This an 8200 source of each feature, an 8200 topic, is one of the single most reliable sources of prelims marks in the whole syllabus. So let us map the origins. Here is what we will map today. First, why we borrowed and what that really means. Second, the Government of India Act of 1935 as the base. Third, what came from Britain. Fourth, what came from the United States. Fifth, Ireland, Canada, and the contributions. And sixth, the other sources and how to remember them. Let us begin. Let us begin by clearing up the word an 820, borrowed an 821, because it is often misunderstood. Our founders faced a choice. They could try to invent an entirely original system of government from first principles, or they could learn from the accumulated experience of the world and T9's democracies, many of which had already tested their institutions over decades or centuries. They wisely chose the second path. Why gamble on untried ideas when the successes and failures of other nations were there to study? Borrowing a well-proven institution is not weakness, it is intelligence. As D.A.P. Ambedkar himself explained, in framing the Constitution, the Assembly had, in a sense, ransacked the constitutions of the world and 82.5, and he saw no shame in it, only good sense. But an 82112, and this is the crucial point, an 82121, they never copied blindly. Every feature they took was examined, debated, and then modified to suit Indian conditions before it was adopted. They studied how each idea had actually worked elsewhere, kept what fit our needs, discarded what did not, and reshaped the rest. The parliamentary system, the federal structure, the Bill of Rights, and A212 each arrived here, changed, tailored to a poor, diverse, newly free nation. Borrowing was the starting point, not the finished product. This is why the honest description is not an 8-2000, borrowed an 8-200, but an 8-200, synthesized an 8-200, 200-200, the Constitution and 8-200. The Constitution and 8-200 key in selecting the best elements from many systems and blending them into a single coherent whole that works for India and 8-200, a whole greater than the sum of its imported parts. Recognizing this turns a dry list of sources into an argument you can make in a mains answer. So the takeaway, our founders deliberately drew on the tested experience of the world and 39's constitutions rather than inventing from scratch, but they adapted every borrowing to Indian conditions and A212. So the Constitution is best understood not as borrowed, but as a masterpiece of synthesis. Before the foreign sources, we must name the single largest source of all, and it is not foreign at all, an A200-200, it is Indian. The Government of India Act of 1935, that last great colonial statute we studied earlier, is by far the biggest single source of our Constitution. A very large share of the articles were drawn, in substance or in structure, directly from it. This makes sense. The 1935 Act was already a detailed, working framework for governing India. 1. The Assembly and 39 Members knew intimately so it was the natural skeleton on which to build. What specifically came from it? The federal scheme and 82 PAVI, the very idea of dividing powers between the center and the units, the office and role of the governor in the states, the emergency provisions that allow the system to respond to crises, the structure of the public services, and a great deal of the detailed administrative machinery that makes government actually run. In short, much of the everyday plumbing of our Constitution is inherited from the 1935 Act. It is important to hold this in proportion for the exam. When people list the foreign sources and 80-1 fall, Britain, America, Ireland, and 80-1, it is easy to forget that the biggest contributor of all was the 1935 Act itself. Now, examiners exploit exactly this gap, asking which act is the primary source of the Constitution. The answer they want is the Government of India Act of 1935. Keep it at the front of your mind, ahead of any foreign borrowing. So the takeaway? The single largest source of our Constitution is the Government of India Act of 1935 and 81-12, supplying the federal scheme, the office of governor, the emergency provisions, and much of the administrative machinery and 8212. And it is the answer whenever you are asked for the primary source. Now to the foreign sources, and we start with the one whose influence runs deepest. For obvious historical reasons, Britain. From the British Constitution, we took the entire architecture of how our government is formed and run. The parliamentary system of government itself, and 8112, an executive drawn from and answerable to the legislature and 8112, comes from Britain, along with the closely related cabinet system, in which ministers work as a collective body. We also took the whole idea of parliamentary procedure, how a bill becomes a law, the roles within the House, and the privileges that protect members in their work. Britain also gave us some of the deepest principles underlying the rule of a free society, the concept of the rule of law and 8212, that everyone, including the government, is subject to the same law, and 8212 is a British inheritance. So is the idea of single citizenship, one common citizenship for the whole nation, which we discussed as a salient feature. And the system of writs, the special court orders through which the judiciary protects citizens and all fort higher rights, also traces to English legal tradition. You can see why Britain is such a large source. We had lived under British political institutions for generations. Our leaders had studied and often practiced within them, and they worked. Adopting the parliamentary model was, in a sense, continuing with a machine India already understood, rather than importing a stranger. That familiarity was itself a reason to borrow. So the takeaway? From Britain came the parliamentary and cabinet systems, the lawmaking procedure and parliamentary privileges, the rule of law, single citizenship, and the writs and 8112, the whole architecture of how our government is formed and how it functions day to day. If Britain gave us the machinery of government, the United States gave us much of the machinery that protects the citizen from that government. The most important American borrowing is the idea of fundamental rights and 8212, a written set of guaranteed rights enforceable in the courts that the government cannot violate. The American Bill of Rights was the great model here, and our part on fundamental rights owes its basic conception to it. Closely tied to this is the independence of the judiciary, and, above all, the power of judicial review and 8212, the authority of the courts to strike down laws that breach the Constitution, and 8212, which is very much an American contribution. Several structural features came from America too. The very idea of a preamble and opening statement of the Constitution, NIM, as aims, follows the American example. The office of the Vice President mirrors the American Vice President. The procedure for the impeachment of the President and the process for the removal of Supreme Court and High Court judges also draw on American practice. Each of these is a favorite one-line prelims fact. Notice the neat division of labor between our two biggest foreign sources. From Britain, we took how the government is formed and runs, and 8212, the parliamentary machinery. From America, we took how the citizen and the Constitution are protected from that government, and 8200 rights, judicial review, and the checks around high office. Holding this simple contrast in mind makes it far easier to recall which feature came from which country in the exam. So the takeaway from the United States came fundamental rights, judicial review, and the independence of the judiciary, the preamble, the vice president, and the impeachment and removal procedures, and A212 well, broadly, the mechanisms that protect the citizen and the constitution against the government. Beyond the two giants, two more countries made contributions important enough to know by name: Ireland and Canada. From Ireland, the standout borrowing is the Directive Principles of State Policy and 8200 that set of non-enforceable goals directing the state toward social and economic justice, which we studied among the salient features. Ireland had itself borrowed the idea, but we took it from the Irish Constitution, and it is firmly an Irish attribution for the exam. From Ireland, we also took the method of election of the president and the practice of nominating distinguished members to the upper house, Rajya Sabha. From Canada, we took features that reinforce a strong center and A212, which fits perfectly with the unitary bias we have already discussed. The very model of a federation with a powerful central government comes from Canada, as does the crucial rule of vesting the residuary powers and A212. The leftover subjects not on any list and A212 in the center rather than the states. The appointment of state governors by the center and the advisory jurisdiction of the Supreme Court are also Canadian borrowings. See how deliberately the founders chose their sources. They wanted a strong center to hold a fragile nation together. So for the shape of their federation, they look not to the United States, whose federation is center weak by comparison, but to Canada, whose federation is center strong. The choice of source was itself a design decision. That is the kind of insight that lifts a mains answer above mere listing. So the takeaway from Ireland came the directive principles, the method of electing the president, and nomination to the Rajya Sabha. And from Canada came a strong center federation, residuary powers vested in the center, centrally appointed governors, and the Supreme Court N39's advisory role. Several other constitutions each contributed one or two specific features, and while they are smaller, examiners love them precisely because they are easy to confuse. Let us pin them down. From Australia, we took the concurrent list and 8200, the set of subjects on which both center and states may legislate, and 8200 along with the freedom of trade and commerce across the country and the provision for a joint sitting of the two houses of parliament. From the Weimar Constitution of Germany came a single but significant idea: the suspension of fundamental rights during a national emergency. And from South Africa, we drew the procedure for amending the constitution and the manner of electing members of the Rajya Sabha. A few more complete the map. From the erstwhile Soviet Union came the fundamental duties and the ideal of justice and A212, social, economic, and political, and A212 that appears in our preamble. From France, we took the ideals of the Republic itself and the stirring trio of liberty, equality, and fraternity, also enshrined in the preamble. And from Japan, we borrowed the specific legal phrase NA200-200, procedure established by law NA200-200, which governs how the state may restrict personal liberty. Do not be daunted by this longer list. The trick is to attach to each country its one or two signature contributions, rather than trying to memorize everything at once. Australia and the concurrent list, Germany and emergency suspension of rights, the Soviet Union and fundamental duties, France and liberty, equality, fraternity, Japan and an A212, procedure established by law on A2A21, learn them as country and feature pairs and they lock into place. So the takeaway: smaller but heavily tested borrowings include the concurrent list, trade freedom, and joint sittings from Australia, emergency suspension of rights from Germany, the amendment procedure from South Africa, fundamental duties, and the ideal of justice from the Soviet Union, liberty, equality, fraternity from France, and NA202, procedure established by law and A201 from Japan. Let us now step back from the individual sources and see the whole for what it truly is. Lay the borrowing side by side, and a remarkable picture emerges. The base is Indian and out 200 wall. The 1935 Act. The machinery of government is British. The protection of the citizen is American. The social goals are Irish. The strong center federation Canadian. And a handful of precise mechanisms come from Australia, Germany, South Africa, the Soviet Union, France, and Japan. Our founders assembled the finest tested parts from across the democratic world and fitted them together into one working machine designed for India. And critically, the whole is coherent, not a patchwork. The parts were chosen to work together and were reshaped so they would. An 8-2 fall, a strong center federation, deliberately paired with single citizenship and an integrated judiciary, a Bill of Rights balanced against directive principles. This is why calling it an 82-cent tea, borrowed an 82-cent tea 2 cent, sells it short. A borrowed jacket does not fit. This constitution fits India because every borrowing was tailored before it was worn. Synthesis, not mere collection, is the achievement. This perspective is also the bridge to the rest of your polity study. Everything ahead and A2 bulb. The preamble, fundamental rights, the directive principles, the structure of parliament, the federal relations, and A2 bulb is one of these synthesized features examined in depth. Knowing the origin of each gives you a mental map of the whole subject before you dive into the detail. So the takeaway, our constitution is a deliberate synthesis, an 8202, an Indian base, British machinery, American protections, and carefully chosen features from many nations, all tailored to fit India and made to work together, an 8212, a whole far greater than the sum of its borrowed parts. Let us finish by turning this map into marks, because this is one of the most rewarding classes in all of polity for your score. For prelims, the AN 8200, which feature from which country AN 8220, question is a near guaranteed high-frequency type. Now, examiners ask plainly from where India borrowed directive principles or judicial review or the concurrent list. If you know the country feature pairs code, these are instant, certain marks and A212, among the easiest in the paper and A212, and there is no ambiguity or reasoning required. Only recall. Few topics offer such a high return for such a definite, learnable body of facts. For mains, the value is the argument we build today, that the Constitution is a work of synthesis, not imitation, and that the choice of each source was itself a considered design decision, and A2I2 powered Canada for a strong center, America for rights. Deployed in an answer on the nature of the Constitution, this shows understanding rather than memorization, which is exactly what fetches higher marks. The method to master it is a simple 2-column table, each country on the left, its signature features on the right, with the 1935 Act at the very top as the largest source. Draw it once from memory, check it, and redraw it until it flows without hesitation. And always keep the proportion right, and 8/200 the 1935 Act first. Then Britain and America as the two great foreign pillars, then the smaller sources as sharp country feature pairs. So the takeaway, this topic pays richly an A24 near certain prelims marks from country feature pairs, and a synthesis argument for mains and A24, and the way to own it is a 2-column table, led by the 1935 Act, then Britain and America, then the rest, recalled until effortless. Let us gather the whole class in one breath. Our Constitution is a synthesis, not a copy, and a tool, the world and 39's best tested ideas, each adapted to Indian conditions. The single largest source is the Government of India Act of 1935 and A212, the federal scheme, the governor, emergency provisions, administration. From Britain came the parliamentary and cabinet systems, rule of law, single citizenship, and the writs. From the United States came fundamental rights, judicial review, the preamble, the vice president, and impeachment. From Ireland came the directive principles. From Canada, a strong center federation with residuary powers at the center. And from Australia, Germany, South Africa, the Soviet Union, France, and Japan came sharp, specific features to learn as country feature pairs. That completes our foundation of the Constitution N by as making N by 212. Next, we go deeper into the document itself, one idea at a time. So that is where our Constitution